Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And She Thrived is here to provide you with the tools that are so much needed when going through a divorce. We want you to know that you are not alone and that you are supported, and to provide you with these resources so that you may become more empowered and a better version of yourself. We want to hear from you and build community with you. So please do let us know in the comments how we might better serve you.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to And She Thrived. Today we have Naielah Ackbarali with us. Marhaban biki. How are you, Naielah? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are so delighted and honored. I am so happy to speak with Naielah today because Naielah and I go back, wow, like what, maybe 2 decades ago. And so we used to stay together a very long time ago in Jordan. So it's such a pleasure to see her again. And mashallah, Naielah is so accomplished, and I'll be sharing some of her background with you right now. Naielah Ackbarali is the founder and CEO of Muslima Coaching. She graduated from Florida State University in 2004 with a double major in International Affairs and Sociology. Thereafter, she studied various Islamic sciences with senior traditional scholars in both Syria and Jordan for over 18 years. She is currently continuing her postgraduate Islamic studies in the UK. Naielah is a trained strategic relationship coach, certified life coach, and a certified NLP Master Practitioner. She has also completed training in the Gottman Method for couples therapy. Combined with her knowledge from Islamic studies, coaching experience, and personal marriage of 15 years, she offers faith-based marriage coaching to couples, wives, and singles. She has helped hundreds of women and couples with almost a decade of coaching experience with clients from all over the world, such as USA, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, and the Middle East. She is an author of several marriage books and has been featured on the Islam Channel and British Muslim TV. Wow, amazing. So wonderful to have you, Naielah. So yes, I mean, it sounds like you've got so much experience, and it's exactly what we need for our community over here at And She Thrive. So let's move on to jump right into the situation of a divorced person seeking to get remarried. And that person is often extremely fearful, a lot of mistrust. Maybe there's a lot of, the desire to want a connection, the desire to want intimacy again, and that closeness, but there's also this fear of the same difficulties and struggles that occurred in the previous marriage. So, or maybe, it's about like not wanting to be controlled, because even though being divorced, as many women would say, it's one of the best things about being divorced is that it's very freeing, is that we, as a woman, we are able to do whatever we want. There's no hierarchy anymore. And so that can be quite scary, as in, okay, well, this person has worked so hard on herself getting to a certain place, and now, oh my goodness, she might end up being controlled. So what would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, I think that it's a reasonable thought to have, especially if someone hasn't taken the means to really process what they've been through. And so the first step is really facing the fear. What is it that really scares you about getting remarried? Because for everybody, it's going to be different. Everybody has a different reason for why they left their first marriage, and nobody is going to have the same type of fear. And so you have to get in touch with yourself and look at your situation and address what you're worried about. And I think the thing here is that when we live life, if we really want to live a successful life, we have to focus on our dreams, our aspirations, and not our fears and our worries, because that's always gonna hold us back. So the reality of life is that quite possibly a woman, she went through something, it was hurtful, and it was painful, but that doesn't mean that history has to repeat itself. It doesn't mean that what you lived in your first marriage is going to be what happens in your next marriage. So first, a person has to take the means to kind of understand what happened. They shouldn't like jump into seeking marriage until they're in a certain place where they could be a spouse that is willing to give and receive love without that baggage that comes along with it. You know, sometimes people, they got married maybe because they were inexperienced with how to vet a spouse. And so I think one of my like main advice is that the second time around, that a person really knows what they want, and that they take the means to really find out about the person that they're considering, so that, you know, they learn from their experience and they take that knowledge, and that will be the springboard, inshallah, for developing and getting into a relationship that won't repeat the same things that possibly someone experienced in the past.
So then would you say that when you say that the person should focus on what she wants, is that just by trial and error? How does one go through that process? What does that process look like? That sort of rediscovery process?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for everybody, but the main pillars is that one is that we have to really define what processing is. And processing is not pushing down your feelings or your emotions. And so sometimes people go through hurtful situations, and the easiest thing to do is to just push it down and mask those feelings. And sometimes people mask them and push them down by getting really busy in their life. And so there is this sense of being free when one leaves their marriage and they are now in a new situation where they feel like, I am able to do whatever I want now. But sometimes that's not really what it is. It's you're out of that emotional situation that was really holding you down. It could have also been, because it depends on the person, it could have been a very toxic situation. And so some people, they go through toxic marriages, unfortunately, and to just be outside of that really gives you life again, because you were being pushed down too much from that situation. But that's not where the healing starts. That's just changing the situation, changing the environment. The healing starts when we confront the feelings and we go towards possibly even revisiting what happened in the marriage and understanding possibly how it started off, how it progressed, and understanding what we liked, what we didn't like, what we felt could have been different. And it is a difficult thing to do, but it's possible, and a lot of people have done it. It's almost similar to the stages of grief. You know, the stages of grief is that a person will go through denial, then they'll go through anger. It's totally normal to have these feelings. Then there may be a bargaining that can happen, that, you know, promising yourself certain things. And then some people can even go through a depression. It's not necessary you go through all these type of stages. And then the last stage is acceptance. And so that's what we're aiming for, is that you go through the motions of understanding what happened to you, understanding what you're feeling, understanding what it is that you want for yourself now, and you accept the good and bad of what you went through. And that's really like how a person kind of moves on and is able to heal from a situation. So I think that that's like a place to start, is working towards accepting and not avoiding, because the avoiding will always bring up those negative feelings and emotions, and you're never going to feel completely free until you do that.
Because I've seen on more than one occasion where a woman has been single, divorced for quite a while, and she feels that she's she's actually at peace with her life, at peace being a single parent, very much like, okay, I'm in a good space right now. Then there comes a good proposal, and it brings all of these feelings up, and it's this, you know, it's actually very, very challenging, because I guess that there's a lot of self-doubt. So would you, what do you advise? Does she just go for it? Or, I mean, you know, is there something that you would say to that person?
Well, I think that you know that you're ready for marriage when you have a burning desire in your heart to get married. So it is true that some people, they will leave their marriages, and they'll feel content with their life. They may not even feel a need to remarry, and that's fine. Not everybody has to remarry again. Everybody has different circumstances. But if you want to marry, then if you're going to consider someone and you have these triggers and a return of negative emotions, you have to get to know the person better. So don't jump into it. That's a mistake. One should take the means to really find out who this person is. What are they about? Because sometimes what happens is that people that get remarried, the other person is getting remarried too, you know? And so a lot of times divorcees marry divorcees. So it's like, well, what did he go through? And you have to know like his baggage too, because if you're going to marry him, that's going to come with the marriage. And so it's really important to like really vet the person. And when you do that and you get to know the person and you have your questions answered, it will probably calm down a lot of those fears, because you realize, oh, it's not going to be the same. This person is different. But first you have to understand what it is you went through, what it is you didn't like, so that when you're looking for someone new, you're able to decipher, he's not like that. It's not going to be like that if I get into a relationship with him, inshallah.
Okay, so on that note, how does a person know that she is mature enough? And I ask this because whenever people go through marriages, of course, as you've said, there's baggage that is accumulated. There are issues that are there. Now, should one like be on some kind of maqam of like reaching some state of, I have now arrived and everything is nice and dandy and I feel, you know, I'm in a good space, and then get married? And then that can also be very disheartening because we're all struggling with stuff continuously. And you think, oh my God, like when is that ever going to happen? I'm never going to be in a space to get married. And is it okay, for example, to marry somebody with these, you know, like, look at this, this is my brokenness in a way. And could we work on this together? Or would you say that's unhealthy? I mean, what is your opinion on that?
I mean, I think that the reality is you never stop growing and maturing in life. That's just something that's going to happen forever. You know, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set up life. We gain wisdom with every situation we go through, even if it's a difficult situation. We gain wisdom, we draw closer to Allah. This is what the hope is. And each experience is going to mature different parts of you. So yes, it's true that a person will never be perfect. A person will never be 100% healed when they enter a new marriage. However, you have to be at a place where you feel like you're ready to move on, because you don't want to ruin your new relationship and the promise of that by tainting it with what happened in the past. And so a person has to have reached that acceptance point. Like, yeah, I went through that in my past. I don't want to go through it now. A way that you know that you've reached the acceptance is you're not bitter about it. When you think about it, you may be sad sometimes, you know, but you're not bitter. And all of this, I think the underlying theme is that you accepted what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you. And you feel like you're ready to do something new. You're not perfect. You don't need to be. But in your heart, you feel like, I'm going to make something different with my life right now. And I really want to get married. And I'm going to make that second marriage, I'm going to make it different. And I've met people like that. They were just really determined, I'm going to make this new marriage something different. And they did.
You like to, of course, by maintaining that person's privacy, and like tell us something of a client that you've experienced where there's been like some kind of a turnaround in some way or in some insight.
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that they are clients. They could even just be friends. I know one person that she had a really difficult first marriage. The husband, like, they saw each other and they liked each other, and he kind of like chased her, so to speak. But then within the marriage, after a few months, he started talking about he's not attracted to her, started talking about, and she was pretty. It wasn't like she wasn't someone that was pretty. But he started to like mention things about her that he didn't like. And it was very hurtful for her. And you can imagine, like, you know, as a wife, like your husband's criticizing the way you look when he saw you before he decided to marry you. So why is this now an issue? And, you know, when it comes to your parents, your height, your skin color, whatever it may be, these are things you can't change, you know? So like, why is it a big deal now? Anyways, they ended up getting divorced. It just one thing after the other, you know, it just started going downhill. They ended up getting divorced. It was very heartbreaking for her. I would definitely say she went through, I would say, depression even, or close to it. Because it's like you can't make sense of what happened. And I think a typical reaction for a lot of women is that we can blame ourselves, and that can also add to the grief. So I think time passed, and she started to look again, and that actually gave her some confidence, you know. So when she started to look again, that gave her confidence that people were interested in her. She was someone that was attractive, and she met this brother, or was introduced to this brother, and then I became involved in that process. So I didn't find him, but she was contacting me and asking me my advice about what did I think about him. He did make less money than her. I think either he was the same age or he was a year younger. And so it seemed like, you know, when you looked at certain things, he wasn't technically what she had anticipated, but his character was really good. And there was a lot of other stuff going for him. His deen was good, you know, and she decided to marry him. And, you know, this was someone, it was a good marriage, alhamdulillah.
That's interesting because I've also recently been acquainted with somebody who got married to somebody who had never fit that sort of typical picture of what she had envisioned, you know. And but alhamdulillah, like Allah put that sakina in her heart, and there was this peace, and she made istikhara, and I think she's very happy with her choice, alhamdulillah. But that's a good point, because sometimes we do get fixated on a certain archetype of some sort, right? So if you could tell us something about what does a healthy, flourishing marriage look like?
Yeah. Whenever people ask me this question, it is a common question. I always think of the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ with Sayyidatina Khadija. And I just feel that Allah sent us these marriages to have us extract wisdoms from them. So, I mean, everybody will take something different. And for me, what I see about their marriage is that it was a friendship. It was a companionship. There really was a love and mercy between their hearts. And I think we have to look at their marriage and see that it's interesting, the setup of it. You know, she was 15 years older. She was richer. She had been married before. She had children. And they had this really beautiful relationship that was not free from challenges. And so I think that that is a reality that everybody needs to accept. If you're going to get married, there's going to be ups and downs. Sayyidatina Khadija had to tolerate her husband going to Ghar Hira to worship Allah on his own. And she gave him that space. And, you know, they went through trials together after the Prophet ﷺ was given his mission. You know, when we think about these situations in the early years of Mecca, where the polytheists, that they were mocking the Prophet ﷺ and humiliating him, and and the like. It was Sayyidatina Khadija that was his spouse, that was by his side. And she went through the economic ban with him. And that's actually what caused her death. After it was over, you know, they had lived all those years in that valley, and it had weakened her because she was a lot older, and it had weakened her and she died. Radiallahu anha. And so when you have a good marriage, it doesn't mean it's going to be problem-free. Rather, what it means is that you've developed a good friendship and a good companionship with each other. So you support each other, you help each other, you love each other. And people are going to have different definitions of what these words mean: support, help, love. So if one is going towards looking for a spouse, these are definitely questions that you have to ask. You know, what does it mean for you to support your spouse? What do you consider, you know, as like helping your spouse out? What does that look like? What does that mean to you? You know, and you have to ask these questions, and even get sometimes detailed about things that can be constant sources of conflict for people. So it's important to know what a good marriage looks like and what are common areas that people conflict in. And when you're vetting someone, you're seeking a spouse, that you address those issues. It's not just about, oh, we sit together and we connect. Marriage involves a lot of other things than that. You have to take care of each other. You got to put up with each other. You have to take care of each other's like parents, kids. There's so much stuff that goes on. And so, you know, connecting is just one part of it. And a person has to, it's so important to understand what a good marriage looks like and what are common causes of conflict and how people can overcome that, so that when you go into that new marriage, inshallah, you're prepared. This is the thing I'm finding. People aren't prepared to get married. And so they go into marriages and they don't know what to expect, because their idea of what a good marriage is comes from fantasy books, comes from movies, comes from Instagram, and it's a problem. So that is definitely my advice, is to find out what it's about and look at what Allah sent us as examples of what good marriages look like.
Right. So now what if a woman, she comes from a background where it was a very toxic background, and she didn't experience having positive role models in terms of what a functional good marriage is like. So then what does she do? Because as you said, you need to be prepared. So a person like that might feel extremely unprepared because she's just kind of winging it, right?
Well, that's why, alhamdulillah, a lot of us have tried to educate people about what good marriages look like and offer courses and try to help people in those situations. And they're not rare situations. Unfortunately, a lot of people are growing up in toxic households and in circumstances that would make them unaware of what a good marriage looks like, what it means to be a good spouse. And so what I would suggest is that people take marriage courses and that they do premarital counseling. And so this is something that a lot of us were offering. I offer premarital coaching, and I feel that it's, you know, my clients have told me that it's been an eye-opener for them. And I know other people are doing it too. These are the things that we have to do in today's times. You know, we spend so much time like getting ready for our careers, getting ready for so many other things in our life, and we don't invest enough time in knowing what it means to be a good spouse and what it takes. And again, you know, these things, they're not just like programs and classes. You have to go to people that they have experience with marriages. I'm really big on this, because we can't just like sit there and listen to things that make us feel nice. We have to really get down to the nitty gritty. Like, what is it like to be in a marriage? And how do you get through those downs and make them ups? So just because someone comes from a certain background, it shouldn't hold them back. They shouldn't think to themselves, oh, I'm never going to make it because this is what I came from. I've met people that they came from troubling backgrounds, but they did the work to heal themselves, because some of this has nothing to do with your spouse. It's like things that affect your emotional well-being and the like. And so you have to like seek the proper help for that, therapy, whatever it is, you know, that makes you feel comfortable, and heal those wounds too. And I've met people that they've done that and they've kind of like made it a mission for themselves that they weren't given a good example in their childhood, but they're going to make a good example for their own children. And that was like a motivation for them to be different.
So with regards to the premarital coaching, are you able to give us like a general overview of what that would consist of? And then secondly, what would be a recommended duration to go through that premarital coaching or counseling?
Yeah, so I offer different types. One is that just a single sisters type of thing. And so this is where I've met women that were previously married, and they wanted to kind of process what happened in their previous marriage in order to help them be in a mindset to like take in a new spouse. So this would just involve sessions of understanding what happened in the marriage and what you're looking for now. Like sometimes what happens is when you went through your first marriage, you reach like certain points where you're like, man, I don't ever want to put up with this again. I don't ever want to be in a marriage where it's this type of situation. And so you actually have those like passing thoughts, but now it's like working with someone, you make it concrete ideas that you understand. And so when you're sitting with someone, you know what questions to ask in order to make sure, okay, this person's not like that, you know? So for example, like maybe you had a controlling spouse and now you're looking for someone, you're looking to get remarried. And so you kind of ask questions that indicate, you know, not just like what the role of a wife is, but like how much does your wife have to tell you about what she does in her day-to-day life? What's ideal? What is ideal for you? So you don't kind of like, you know, let the beans out of the bag, so to speak. Like, you know, you better not control me, and I'm not going to put up with that. And if you're going to be like that, I'm not considering you, because a person that likes you for other reasons is going to put their best foot forward and say, no, I'm not controlling and I won't be like that. But their idea of controlling may be different from yours. And so you have to kind of like find out what it is that that person sees as controlling or not.
Okay, so I mean, like to say, oh, well, you know, I like to go out to do exercise or go out with my friends. What do you think about that? And then see what he says. I do this kind of studies. I go to this class once a week. What do you think about that? You mean just like that, and gauge his response?
I think first ask him, what is it that how would you like your wife to spend her free time? Mm-hmm. And how much about what she does in her day-to-day do you need to know about? And then you see what he says. And then from there, then you say, well, I'm the type of person, I like to go out with my friends. Like, you know, do you think a wife should be limited and the times that she goes out? Like, what you ask these things, you have to get specific, because maybe this is something that will cause a trigger and will cause issues in the marriage, because it's something that you definitely want to avoid, because that's what you went through in your first marriage. And so this is what these kind of sessions help a person with. And then the other sessions are actually with the guy. So I meet with people that they want to get married. And so I sit with the potential bride and groom. And it's a program that I set up. They go through the program together, and I help them understand what a good marriage looks like, tips of how to handle conflict, and a lot of other stuff. And I get them to do homework and activities together, like outside the session, where they talk and they ask specific questions, and they do that on their own time, and they come back to the session, they tell me how it went, and they can also email me on the side and tell me their concerns, you know, because sometimes you're like, you know, either the guy or the girl, it's like they're going along, getting to know each other at a deeper level, like really about to get married. And then there's like concerns that come up. So you have someone that's helping you and guiding you. Those sessions are about three 3 sessions I do with those. Sometimes people want more. Sometimes, but the program itself is 3 sessions. So as opposed to the other one where I'm just working with the woman, I don't have a limit of how many sessions a woman would do because it just depends on her situation.
Okay. So as you know, we live in a time where getting remarried is very, very difficult, and probably more so difficult if a person is a divorcee with children. And as you might know, the whole scene of the dating apps, it's quite profane, and it's very, very similar to non-Muslim hookup culture. So do you have any advice for women of how to go about getting remarried, given this current situation?
Yeah, well, I think definitely it depends on the app. There's a lot of apps out there now. There's a lot of different matrimonial websites. And so one has to go towards the one that I think that they are more or less trying to stick to Islamic principles the most. So I have heard that there are apps out there that are similar to what you're saying. And then I know other apps that are not like that, that like my clients, people that have come to me, they found each other on certain apps, and they got married from that. And so I know like reputable people that they have used apps. So investigate the app. What services do they offer to protect you? But if that's a big turnoff, because it's kind of like maybe you've done that, you're just turned off, you just have bad experiences, people lie, you can't trust it. Of course, we can't underestimate what asking friends, family, and community leaders can do. Sometimes they know people personally and they're able to recommend. And then I think that's something that's really popping up now. And I think it's definitely something that one should consider is marriage events and conventions. So this is a new thing that's really, I think, becoming popular, where singles can go to an actual location. I know they have them across the US. In the UK, they've really started up now. And you can go and meet the person and talk with them and then take it from there. So sometimes that's better than an app, because on an app, someone could put up a fake photo. They can just start DMing you and bothering you and harassing you. Whereas
you can just present a different persona, like really,
yeah,
they just create this thing, and that's very far from who they really are.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And so, which is very different when you're like sitting in front of the person, you can see the person, how tall they are, like, what they really look like. And so I would recommend going towards marriage events and conventions. Like even masajid are starting to do this. I recently saw that a local mosque, they had a marriage event that was only open to people that were 35 and up. Mm-hmm. And some conventions I've seen or events I've seen, it's like Muslim professionals only. So you're going to get people that, they're making a living, because maybe you're someone that you want to make sure that the person can support you, or that you're educated, you have a good job, and you're not just going to relate to someone that's not like that. You need someone that's also a professional, that's also educated, because that's where you are in life. So I think going to these events is worth a while, and you don't have to go alone. You can take a friend, and seeing where it goes from there. I also think, we cannot underestimate the power of dua and making dua, because at the end of the day, it's what Allah gives you. It's your nasib. So I think taking any means possible that will give you confidence that you can really find out who this person is. And I also, like, for me, I suggest that people don't do this type of stuff on their own. I know that we want to do everything on our own now, but what I found is that sometimes people don't know how to vet a person. And when it comes down to it, when you like someone, and I see this all the time, when people are considering other people, and it's normal, when you like someone, you will make concessions and you will drop things. It's like, okay, before he came along, I told myself I would not marry someone like that. But now he's there and everything else looks pretty good. So is this really important to me? It's kind of like we think we have a menu in front of us and it's like, should I get the French fries with the burger? Maybe just the pizza instead. It's like, no, this is like your life. You don't want to choose like that. You don't want to, everybody should have deal breakers. Everybody should have things where it's like, I'm not going to marry someone that's like this. And you go in there, and through the process, you don't let go of those deal breakers unless you can really see, okay, maybe my deal breaker is not something that is necessary. Maybe it was something that was more related to where I was at, and I think I'm over that, or I think this prospect offers new things that I haven't considered, and it's really not a deal breaker for me now. And that you're confident in that. You're not just kind of letting it go because you don't want to let go of the guy, but that you really are confident in that.
Now, say you meet somebody and they really appeal to you. Now, how much is too much to say? Do we say everything that happened in our marriage and how terrible it was and the triggers that we had? Or is that unhealthy? Or do we focus on, okay, you know what? These are the lessons that I've learned. How much is too much detail? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think a person has to remember that that could be a red flag for a guy. A woman that comes in and she's just still complaining about her ex-spouse, and he's in a position where he wants to start a new life. He wants something fresh. He wants to enjoy his new spouse. Maybe he's also coming from a marriage that he got out of, and he doesn't want to marry someone where all he's going to have to do is hear about the person complaining about their first spouse. And I had a situation like this. I had a situation where the person was constantly, they got married and the person was constantly talking about their ex-spouse and the situation and what it was doing to them. And the husband just couldn't handle it. And it just, months went by, years went by, and then he divorced her. Mm-hmm. Because it's like he felt like he felt like it wasn't a marriage between them. It was kind of like a triangle.
Oh, wow.
And
is it because like she was kind of expecting him to be her therapist?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You have to heal yourself before you go into another marriage. You have to realize that your spouse should support you, but they can't be your therapist. And at the same time, they may be going through their own stuff. They may have been married before. They may have kids from a previous marriage. They could have a very similar situation or setup. You guys have to decide together, okay, when we're married, how are we going to make this work considering these are our circumstances? So I think that when a person goes into the meetings and they're talking to someone, they are just concerned about, I got to let this person know what I went through in the past so that they understand this is where I'm at and this is what I'm going to tolerate, what I'm not going to tolerate, that's understandable. So it's fine to kind of like give a summary of, I went through this and this is something that I've accepted, but I don't want to experience again. And that's it. You don't go further than that. Rather, you take the means to explain more about what you're looking for in a spouse and finding out if that person lives up to it. So, nobody, I mean, just the same, like a woman wouldn't want a guy to come into her life and all he's doing is talking about his ex-wife. I mean, that's kind of like, okay, can you like stop talking about her? Can you, it gets annoying. And so this is like a red flag for a guy. And it's also a red flag for you. You don't want to kind of get into a situation where you have to be his therapist. That's not what you want to be. You also want a brand new like situation. So only say to the extent that's needed, but that doesn't mean that you can't you can't say your concerns in a different way. He's not going to marry your ex. He's looking to marry you. So make sure that your concerns are stated, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, you got to bring your ex-spouse into the picture in order to do that.
And how much of detail to give regarding one's marital history? Say, for example, there are many people out there who have actually had a subsequent marriage after their divorce, which didn't last for very long, and then it ends, and they don't really consider it to be like a proper marriage. I've seen it many times. Does one have to say that? And on top of that, for example, I've spoken to somebody and I could read between the lines that he had several marriages. And when I asked him, well, how many, he didn't want to tell me. So
Mm-hmm.
right. So my point being is that, the whole process, it's a learning process. There's a lot of grief post-divorce. People make mistakes. It's also, like, say, for example, there are many women out there who've had pretty much a destroyed self-esteem through their marriage. And then there's a man who comes along who is very flattering. He makes her feel good. She might be easily swayed, and she might end up, in a relationship, for example, and ending, or as I said, this men who choose to do that and leave them. So how much do we say, because we come from a society where we still, I think, adjusting to normalizing the conversation about divorce, and there are still many cultural stigmatizations around that. And even though it is better to be in a marriage and then to, commit illicit relations outside, there's still a lot of judgment around divorce. So how much, should she say that's reasonable?
Well, I mean, definitely if he specifically asks, you can't lie, and so if it's a specific question that's brought up, like how many times have you been married, then it's not something I think that a person should lie about, because at the end of the day, you did what was halal. You did what was pleasing to Allah. It's not like you did a relationship outside of what Allah asked us to do. And so that's admirable. And that's something that should be mentioned. It's like, there was a person that came along and I thought it was going to work out, and I wanted to do what was right for the sake of Allah. And so if someone has a problem with that, maybe that's not the type of person you want to marry, but I think the thing is, because it is something that can happen. They call them like rebound marriages, where you've gotten out of a really bad relationship and you're vulnerable and you get into a new relationship, not really processing everything going on and just wanting love, wanting company. And maybe that new relationship's worse than the first one, because of the setup of it. So at the end of the day, a person says what needs to be said, but if it's a specific question, they shouldn't lie. But I also think that in terms of like seeking a man out, if he is someone that has had multiple marriages that didn't work out, that is a red flag that a woman should not ignore. It's like, how come your marriages don't work out? Like, okay, I understand the rebound marriage thing. Yes, people fall into that. It can happen. But if it's like someone is hiding it, they don't want to say, then that is a cause, at least for me personally, like with the work that I do, that's a cause for concern. Because is this person just using marriage as a way to become physical with women and not really take care of them? And so that is a huge cause of concern. It's a red flag. Someone shouldn't ignore that.
Okay, I'd like to talk about the mahat, because for the marital dowry, the mahat, we've been told that this is really securing a woman's right in terms of like almost an investment. However, what we find is that especially a man who is now moving on post first marriage, he has a lot of financial commitments. Often he's paying alimony and child support. Maybe, their first wife has literally taken half, if not most of their wealth. And what I see over and over again, that these men who are older and have moved on from that, they are very straight about they are not going to make that kind of financial investment again. And because a woman is in a way kind of needy, in the sense that is not like she's like spoiled for choice, because as you know, the pool of men is not that large, and out of fear of losing someone, she might acquiesce and say, okay, then fine, then like a little bit is okay. So it's a very kind of like gray area. And also how, when we look at the art of the common culture, usually you'd go take the mahat from your common culture. But many of us have moved and we've left our original countries and we're living here in the West, and there is no sort of general standard. If you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, well, I think Islamically, the mahr is actually a gift and it's not a price tag on her. So the mahr is not like any indication about how much you're worth. It's the gift. It's a gift that a husband gives the wife. And so what I think personally, especially when it comes to second marriages, because the first time around, people are more willing to give more, and they want to kind of like show that they have the means to take care of her, and it's a really big step in their life. Whereas maybe the second time around, it's like it's just become something normalized. What I think is that a person should really focus on finding a good spouse, because sometimes when you are focusing too much on the mahr, the guy kind of like picks up on it, and it's like, why is she like, forming her exit strategy? Because it's like, I want to hide my heart just in case things don't go right. And it's like, but that makes him puts him in an uncomfortable situation, because it's almost like transmitting the message that I don't know if you're really good enough to marry, and that you really will not hurt me like my past spouse did. And I don't want to be in a situation where I go through this again. So I would say first, really, really vet that person and make sure he is a good spouse, such that it's not about the mahr. It's about you're sure that he is going to be good to you. Another thing is that it is possible to make the mahr higher and make it conditional. So you can make it kind of like, okay, I only need, like, for example, I'm willing to accept right now upfront $2,000, but if there was divorce or if there's death, I would get X amount. So at least it's not taxing him. It's like, okay, I understand you have things going on with you, but at the same time, I have my own situation, and the world that we live in today, it's a bit difficult to kind of leave my job to become a wife, only for possibly not to work out. And then I'm kind of in a very sticky situation. So if there was divorce, if there was death, I want this amount. And so you can make part of it upfront and part of it conditional upon divorce and death. And you could talk to scholars about how to do that. But that may be a suggestion as well. So it's kind of like you get something, but the focus is not really the mahr. The focus is that this person is going to take care of you, you're going to take care of them, and you're ready to take this step, inshallah.
Yes, so I do agree with you that the focus is not the mahr, because you need to make sure you find a high quality man, right? However, I don't really agree with it not being important, because the reality is that even though the guy is a stellar, is a gem, there's still the risk of, there's one thing that divorce teaches women, is that there is no guarantee of anything. And that it's very possible that even that marriage with a wonderful man might fail. And she needs something to secure herself. Because in my research post-divorce, according to the Sharia, a woman can't retrospectively claim from her husband. And that is only guaranteed by virtue of the mahr. Or, for example, if you tell him, I would like, I'm going to be dominantly an at-home wife, serving you on a domestic level, that you can afford me X amount of money per month, i.e. like a stipend. And that is basically her investment for a rainy day if something happens. Because if that marriage fails, and say, for example, her contribution was dominantly in the domestic realm, then she's going to be in a difficult situation, for sure.
Yeah, so that's why she can make it conditional. So at least she gets something up front, and they can also be like a condition upon divorce or death. This is something I know in Syria, before things happened there, this was actually a very common thing in the culture, that they would make the mahr delayed to death. And one Syrian woman told me that it's very common in the culture, that it's like you don't really receive something then and there. I mean, this is obviously because people have money issues and stuff. But at death, like you get everything that was promised to you. So in a situation like this, you can make it. It's best to talk to scholars about how to do this. That you get something now, and then you can possibly like make a second amount that is delayed upon divorce or death.
Right, that's the mahat muajjal.
Yeah. And so this is something that can happen, inshallah. So at least, because the situation too is that like you said, he may have like a lot of other expenses, and it's either she's going to accept a low mahar, or he's not going to marry her because he feels like he can't afford the mahar, or he may have to borrow money, and that puts him in a sticky situation that then they start off the marriage where he's like in debt, and there's all these other issues that can put pressure on the marriage. So maybe find a way to get to make it work where she can secure herself for the future, or even making it something that is paid on a yearly basis. So, but this all has to be stated at the time of the contract, right? And so something where it's kind of like every year for the next like 10, 20 years, you pay me as a mahar $2,000. Something like that. So it's there are ways to get around this. I'm not saying that it's not important, but I'm saying that it shouldn't be like the obsessive focus, which I think sometimes can happen to people because they haven't done the healing. And so it's like they're just so ready to kind of like secure themselves, but then it's kind of a turn off for the guy. It's like, why is she so like worried about if divorce happens, when it's like we haven't even agreed to kind of like get married? It can kind of, men have their own red flags. They're having their own, just like you and I, we're having a conversation here for women. Brothers are getting together and they're having conversations about how to notice red flags for like women. And so this is something that I'm just saying that a woman should know her rights. There's nothing wrong with asking for a mahar, but there are different ways to do it. And I don't believe in like rejecting a good person if they can't give something that's high up front. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. And linked to that, we see now in this phase of life where people are older, as I said, the men have a lot of commitments from their first marriage and their children and alimony and things, that we see that for many people, it's the marriages have almost become like non-Muslim marriages, where I'm not going to support you financially in terms of marital maintenance, nafaqah, i.e. it's going to have to be like a two-way thing. We're going to both be putting into it. And if it doesn't work out, God forbid, la samahallah, well, then that's it. We'll just part ways. And because even though it is a woman's marital right, because of her desperation and need for companionship, she's now relinquishing her rights. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I mean, it just depends on how it's done. So let's just take like people that first get married, okay? So not like a divorce situation. A lot of people these days are going into marriages and they're both working and they're both contributing. It's just becoming something that's becoming common. And so if that's a situation where they're both contributing, they're both going to the marriage that way, they're both okay with it, they've kind of talked about how it's going to work out in terms of expenses and bank accounts and the like, it's upon what they agree. However, if it's a situation where a woman is desperate and saying something like, I'll take care of myself, you don't have to pay for anything, let's just get married and I just want that companionship, I think those are really risky situations. I don't really agree with them because what ends up happening, I feel, is it makes the marriage imbalanced. So it's like you're doing everything for yourself and you only want his company, but a man's natural drive is to provide and protect. And so I feel like what happens in situations like this, where you tell him he doesn't have to do anything except kind of be there, is he doesn't actually show up for you in the ways that you would want a spouse to show up, because that natural drive to provide and protect isn't there. It just becomes something physical. It's almost like dating. And men get bored. They get bored. It's really interesting. They get bored of situations like that, and women lose respect. She, in that moment, may think to herself, oh, it's okay, I'll do it. I'm doing everything anyways. I'll just continue this way. But what happens is you're in your heart still wanting someone to take care of you. It's not just like having a best friend. It's having someone that's going to protect, look after your needs, be there for you. And it doesn't happen if you don't give him some type of responsibility. So each person has their own responsibilities. I think there's a lot of wisdom in the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set up the Islamic marriage that makes each spouse like give something. And that helps them both invest into the relationship in different ways. So I don't think people should mess with that, you know. But if they both agree that the finances are going to be handled a certain way, then I don't see anything wrong with that. I just see a problem with, I'll do everything. You don't have to do everything except show up. That's what I think is the issue.
Okay, thank you so much. Nailah, do you have anything that you'd like to impart to our community as last words of advice? Women out there who are going through a divorce or considering one, or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think I'd like to say, don't let the past hold you back from what the future can hold. And even if you went through a difficult situation, a troubling situation, you didn't expect it, it doesn't mean that you can't grow from it. You can't become something more beautiful from it, and that you can't be someone that can benefit another person and have a great marriage in the future, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nailah. It has been wonderful seeing you again.
Alhamdulillah wa iyyakum. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much for having me.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.